Okay, the final video for the 1940s, and this is where it goes a little bit differently because we're now starting to look at Asia. Previous to this, the Cold War had all been centred around Europe, around the expansion of Stalin's control of Eastern Europe, and around what he was doing in Eastern Europe. So now we're expanding out into Asia. This creates a whole new dimension for the war. So the things that are going in Asia, really, it starts off with China in 1949. Now, China had been undergoing a massive civil war even before World War One for years. There had been communists fighting the nationalists, the communist sort of People's Army fighting against the nationalists of the Kuomintang, and in the end, they decided to call a truce and fight against the Japanese, but very quickly got back to fighting each other by 1945, and the Japanese were defeated. And it only took 4 years for the communists to win under Mao Zedong and defeat the nationalists, push them all the way out of China to Taiwan, which is a Chinese island essentially off the coast. And now the communists under Mao start to form a government in 1949, and this whole thing then just changes the dynamic, really, because China's a huge country with huge potential at the time, not the huge power that it has now, but certainly potential with its huge population and natural resources, and this starts to frighten the West. In the West, people start to blame Truman and say it's a failure of Truman doctrine. You've failed to stop the spread of communism or contain it. So now they've got to really start thinking about what they're going to do about this situation, because this could influence the whole area. And in fact, it does influence the whole area, as we'll see. Now, the first thing they do is in 1950 is they sign what's called the Treaty of Friendship with the Soviet Union. It's not a military alliance, but it's a treaty saying we're going to be friends, we're going to help each other out. And it sends a message to the world that these two communist countries are on each other's side. And lots of propaganda around this, kind of from the American side of it is very worried and scary, and from the Chinese and Russian side of things is very kind of celebratory and kind of promoting the idea that these two countries are communist and they belong together and they're going to help each other, and it's a great idea, it's a great thing for the people of both these countries. So this whole thing changes the focus and encourages communists elsewhere in Asia to think bigger, to think more expansive, and to think in a more sort of longer term goals. How can we spread this ideology? Because they believe that this is the right way to live and that capitalism is fundamentally evil and fundamentally hurts the working people. So they're so desperate to make sure that it spreads because it will solidify their own control in their own countries.